The danger in an age of mass media is that information also can be misused to manipulate the public. All around the world, authoritarian rulers increasingly use media to coerce the consent of the governed. Our hosts today, the International New York Times, recently published a remarkable description of this phenomenon under the headline, "The Velvet Glove." The power of a leader's reasoning or the truth of his arguments, the report suggests, are often less important than his command of media influence. What results can be the illusion of democracy, but not its substance. No, our technologies alone will not save us, but neither need they ruin us. It is not the power of our tools, but how we use them that will determine our future.
Yali Madad, welcome, bienvenue, a very warm welcome to tonight's Friday night reflections to our Jamaat and multi-faith family members. My name is Hus Madabji. I'm so honored to be hosting tonight's program. I hope you're all doing well and you're staying positive. And yeah, this is a bizarre time. It's weird. Yeah, it is. I'm not even talking about the US election. That's definitely out there, but just all this uncertainty in the world. But as scary as it can be sometimes, at least we have each other, our community. That and Netflix, community and streaming TV. That's how you get through a pandemic. That and by being safe and wearing a mask. Tonight, our Friday Night Reflections episode is on the theme, the advancement of technology, reimagining the future. President Ameerally Kassim-Lakha will provide an update on maintaining our financial well-being during these difficult times. We will then watch an interview with Dr. Moez Rajwani. He's the chairman of Focus Canada, and Dr. Daphne Taras, the dean of the Ted Rogers School of Management at Ryerson University, my alma mater, for a discussion on what steps we can take to turn challenges into opportunities and embrace the future of work. And you don't want to miss the inaugural FNR debate with our participants, Salima Versi and Moez Rajwani. The debate topic will be this: is technology a blessing or a burden? It was very good. We recorded it earlier. You don't want to miss it. And finally, as always, we'll sit back and enjoy the great music of our Jamaati artists. It is now my honor to welcome President Ameerally Kassim-Lakha.
My dear brothers and sisters, Yali Madad, I'm very happy to address the Jamaat today. I would like to start by conveying Mubarakis to you for the message and blessings we have received from Maulana Hazrat Imam this week. Let me recap the message. Maulana Hazrat Imam indicated that the challenges posed by the pandemic to the health of his Jamaat remains of deep concern to him. He is pleased that in many countries, Jamaat Khanas have reopened in compliance with government guidelines. But his Jamaat should remain aware that there is no room for complacency over the risks posed by the highly contagious coronavirus. The need for wearing masks, observing physical distancing, and adhering to all hygiene protocols remains paramount and should be treated as part of normal life for some time to come. Hazrat Imam continued to say that many countries are seeing a resurgence of COVID, which demands that his murids should take personal responsibility to protect themselves, their families, and their communities by following public health guidelines. Hazrat Imam then conveyed his most affectionate paternal, maternal, loving blessings for the good health, happiness, safety, and well-being of all his murids, with best loving blessings for Mushkil Hassan. Therefore, members of the Jamaat, this is a time for extreme continuing caution. Hazrat Imam used the term demand, implying that this situation demands that we take personal responsibility for safety. Tonight, I would like to address another matter of importance: how we maintain our financial well-being through the pandemic, which is continuing with new surges in infection. First, let us review where we sit in the broader economic climate. As Hazrat Imam has indicated, work on producing vaccines is advancing rapidly. We also know that populations are getting better at managing disease spread and patient care. However, the toll from COVID continues to rise, and as a result, economic recovery is uneven. It is now clear that broad-based economic recovery is not occurring organically. Rather, it is dependent on progress in managing disease spread and implementation of a vaccine. Until this happens, many businesses will continue to operate on a tight budget, find areas for automation and cost reduction, and conduct their affairs at limited capacity. Members of Jamaat, we have spoken several times about the future of work, about the Jamaat taking steps to ensure long-term stability and growth prospects in our careers and businesses. Using this slow period and new online education opportunities to credential towards a better future, which our beloved Hazrat Imam has encouraged. My address today is not about the future of work, but the need for action has never been stronger, and the Jamaat should take this matter seriously. The future of work is an opportunity to show personal agency. It's not an area in which to be left behind or accept redundancy. Today, with respect to our financial well-being through the pandemic, I will discuss three topics: spending, investing, and future planning. Let me start with our spending. The COVID crisis started 10 months ago. It may take a while for a vaccine to be approved and several months before it is distributed to the world's population and we resume normal economic activity. Therefore, we may be in the current circumstance for a while. The question is, how should we manage financially if there's no quick recovery? Our Jamaat has to live prudently, within its means, and not spend unreasonably. People around us may be tired or ease precaution in the hope for a near-term solution, but our time horizon has to be longer. There are several steps to take. Control costs and overhead, manage cash savings, and avoid high levels of discretionary expenses. Plan as families. Maintain a cushion to withstand a job loss or health issue. If necessary, prepare a budget with the family to make it through the crisis. Take advantage of government grants, subsidies, payment reductions, and deferrals available to individuals and businesses. The rent subsidy, wage subsidy, and emergency loan programs are evolving. Take advantage of them in a timely way. Look into current debt arrangements. If there's an opportunity to reduce interest expense by refinancing mortgages and loans, take advantage. At least consider it. This may require guidance from those who can support us. Let me turn to investment opportunities. In a recessionary period, there may be opportunities to invest in businesses, stocks, and real estate. I highlight the following issues for your consideration. Invest prudently and only when you have the capacity to endure a downturn. Businesses and markets are volatile. Opportunities that look attractive today may not withstand continued economic pressures tomorrow. This means due diligence is important. The math behind an investment has to work, including worst-case scenarios that have to be tested. If you don't understand how to conduct this sort of analysis, seek help. But don't invest emotionally. Scrutinize line by line. There are several community investment groups that are honest in intent, but with propositions that carry risk and uncertainty. Here, we cannot be guided by familiarity alone. we must carry out independent research. Inquire into the sponsor's expertise and track record. Don't be rushed to make a decision. Ask for referrals, even if the sponsor is well known. Ask the question, if the proposition encounters roadblocks, will the sponsor have the capacity to clear them? If the sponsor is vague or unduly optimistic, make your own evaluations. In this period of COVID, be alert to fraud. There will be those who lure you into poor investment opportunities. Typically, you should not transfer investment funds to an individual, always to a reputed institution, or in trust to an investment firm. If an individual insists you transfer money to them personally or their business, question why. Let me turn to future planning. This is a matter we don't routinely discuss, but it is important. It has taken decades for our Jamaat to settle in Canada, build houses, businesses and infrastructure, which is our strength today. Without adequate planning and protective measures, we can put our families, children and community at risk of losing our foundation. The first area of planning relates to wealth transfer. Individuals can spend a lifetime building for their children and grandchildren, but without proper planning, decades of effort can result in loss of resources and family conflict. Proper planning includes establishing who receives assets and how and when such transfers are made. It is natural to procrastinate on these issues, but addressing them sooner rather than later brings clarity, reduces conflict, and allows you to monitor progress or make adjustments over time. Planning can provide your family with a tax-efficient way to address the disposition of assets. On the other hand, poor planning may result in the tax burden depleting the value of the transferred asset. As you think through these considerations, seek proper counsel, legal and tax, to ensure you have a well thought out plan that you are comfortable with. Remember, the successful transfer of wealth to the next generation through wills, trust, succession, life insurance requires careful consideration, taking into account the wealth requirements of each generation. The majority of families are not adequately prepared for transferring wealth. Wealth transfer does not happen by accident. It requires a plan. Families must work together to document their plan and build governance to manage the wealth over generations. Members of the Jamaat, future planning also includes disaster preparedness. Hazrat Imam has stressed the importance of ensuring that our physical infrastructure can withstand the effects of natural disasters, including earthquakes and floods, and the importance of preparing our families to react quickly should a disaster occur. The Jamaat institutions cannot emphasize these matters enough, and we will support wherever possible. However, the Jamaat is individually responsible for ensuring their safety and protecting their assets. This is in your hands. If you live in a high-risk area, you must seek to insure your assets. Homeowners should evaluate the need for coverage for earthquake, flood, and other disasters. This is equally important for investment and commercial properties. Business continuity is also critical, which is what this crisis has taught us. We can plan for this by buying coverage for man-made and natural disasters in our interruption insurance. We are reminding the Jamaat again, those who live in high seismic and flood risk zones such as British Columbia, cities and towns along the Ottawa and St. Lawrence rivers. Please review your insurance coverages for earthquake and flood. In conclusion, I want to say to you that financial well-being underpins every aspect of our material lives. Financial literacy can help us achieve our life goals, including saving for education or retirement, using debt responsibly, running a business, wills and estate planning, wealth transfer and succession. Our Jamaati institutions provide considerable financial education, including webinars, one-on-one services, and consultations with professionals externally if needed. Through webinars during COVID, we have been connecting the Jamaat with some of the best economic experts in the country. Take advantage of these programs to enable prudent and forward thinking. We will continue to work with the Jamaat to ensure that every family is prepared and can look to the future with confidence. We are here for you. Thank you and Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you so much, President Saad, for your words of wisdom. And now we move to the next segment with Dr. Moez Rajwani, the chairman of Focus Canada, and Dr. Daphne Taras, the dean of the Ted Rogers School of Management at Ryerson University. Dr. Rajwani is a chiropractor by profession and has served the Jamaat for many years, including as Vice President of the Council for Canada and as Headquarters Mukhi Sahib at the Smiley Centre, Toronto during the Diamond Jubilee. He's currently the chairman of Focus Canada. Dr. Daphne Taras is currently the dean of the Ted Rogers School of Management. She previously served as dean of the Edwards School of Business at the University of Saskatchewan from 2010 to 2016, prior to a move to Saskatoon in 2010. Professor Taras was a professor at the University of Calgary's Haskayne School of Business and its associate dean of research and director of the PhD program. They will be discussing the steps we can take to turn challenges into opportunities and embrace the future of work.
Okay, thank you for the introductions, and thank you for joining us, Daphne. It's wonderful to have you again on our Friday night reflection this time. And Daphne, I wanted to start off by just, our world has changed, our work has changed, our home has changed, our whole life has changed because of COVID. And you're in a unique position. You are dean of a business school preparing students to go out into the real world, and all of us are struggling on how to take the next step and what we should be doing and what our education should look like, and we'd love to hear your thoughts around this.
We're an enormous business school. I don't know if you know, we're about 12,000 students, so I believe we're one of the biggest in the country. We knew that we were going to have to go virtual on Friday, March 13th, which is a day that I don't think any of us will ever forget because we were almost entirely unprepared. We were anticipating all kinds of disasters, that students would decide not to go to school, that our professors would not be able to work the technology. But in fact, the alternatives are not so great, and people are really taking advantage of the opportunity to come to school. Our enrollment is higher than it used to be, and our professors are all prepared, and it's actually going much better than I had expected. It's still exhausting. I must tell you that it is not easy, and all of our professors are missing what we call the post-lecture high, when you finish your lecture and you feel fantastic and you decide you're going to celebrate. And in this world, you finish your lecture, you may talk to a few students, you walk away, and then nothing happens. So it's a little bit hard.
And Daphne, this nothing happens is also interesting because you work from home, you study at home, you cook at home, and there's no gaps. And tell me, I know you've been doing some thinking around this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I did a lot of research as an academic on work-life balance and the use of portable technologies. And what we found was there's a lot of use of portable technologies to be at work, and then people use at home. They have home computers. or they have cell phones, but they're very connected. But what we found was there was an intermediate period of time where people were neither at work nor at home. If you're in your car, you're driving. If you're on public transport, you're thinking. And we used to do things like call our parents with that time. And people that time has vanished. And I think that's causing a bit more stress.
And how do you deal with that? Have you come up with any solutions?
I don't have any solutions. I think you give yourself little rituals. And I know our students are starting to give themselves little rituals. In my case, I make a cup of coffee. I bring it to myself. I create for myself intermediate time that is neither work nor family. It's a transitional time, and I think we all need to do that to be healthy.
I think health and mental health are critical components during this. You know, Daphne, a lot of the community and a lot of members of society are going through a lot of stress. You know, they're thinking about the future. Many of them might be in middle management. Maybe they're in the retail industry or the hospitality industry. And they're saying to themselves, what's next? How do I step back into the educational world? And what do I do? And how do I make myself marketable for the future?
I think we've never had a society that's been more capable of reaching out and self-teaching or having opportunities. Now, one of the things my school has started doing very aggressively is micro-credentialing students. And by that I mean we have 2 to 3 hour boot camps where the students are teaching other students. It's become fantastically successful. Things like Excel, Tableau, data visualization. I think that these are a lot of the skills that are necessary to recover from the pandemic. So I just got a report that we have something like 10,000 students took boot camps over the summer when everybody thought that the generation would be paralytic. And instead of being paralytic, they reached out and they taught themselves new skills. And so I really encourage people to do that, not to become paralyzed, but to do something new and difficult. We're getting all kinds of advice to do hobbies in order to handle our stress. But I think one of the best things we can do is something new that we can feel that we've conquered. And I want you to ask me about my own experience taking a boot camp at my advanced age.
I was going to say, Daphne, after all the degrees beside your name, I mean, MBAs and law degrees, even your micro-credentialing, I hear. So tell me about your boot camp. And well, did it start at 6 in the morning with a bright and early, fresh morning, or was it something different?
It actually started late in the day. It started at about 6 o'clock. A number of people, actually somebody from the Ismaili community was also, Mohammed Danani was there, the Minister of Labour for the province of Alberta, and 100 students. And what was fascinating, it was an Excel level 1. It was really one of the most difficult things that I have ever done. And every so often the student tutors would peel me off into a chat room, fix me up, get me back into the main room. I finally passed. It was my second attempt, so everybody should be able to be humble and understand that you may not pass the first time, but don't give up. I didn't give up.
Well, Daphne, that's what we call lifelong learning, right?
I so believe in that, and I believe that during the pandemic, the skills that we learn, particularly, I've noticed data analytics. It's been a terrible catastrophe for many businesses, but we're not letting the data sing the way we can see opportunities. So here's an inspiring story for people who think that there's nothing they can do differently during the pandemic. We have hundreds and hundreds of co-op students and co-op placements, about almost 2,000 co-op placements, and all kinds of employers were coming asking for our students. And we noticed that, using the data, we noticed that when there were postings for employers looking for students, sometimes it was a busy time of the term, or the employer needed the students very quickly within a month, even a week, and they didn't get enough take-up. And so we automated the system, so we sent out emails to the students and said, here's an opportunity. And we went from a 62% placement rate to a 90% placement rate during the pandemic, simply by watching our data sing to us. I wanted to tell it to you because there are ways that one can look at one's own business and look for new angles on improvement.
That's very interesting, Daphne. Usually we think when we are not doing well in our business, the best thing is to change our business and do something different. But what you're saying is that even within your own sector, you need to look at it a little bit deeper. You have to look at it analytically, maybe with a different type of hat, a different perspective.
Even if we could get, let's say at the business school, a 5% increase in student retention, that would be 5% more students that finish their degrees, which is the right thing to do. But there are ways of improving desperate situations. And what I've noticed during the pandemic is that a lot of people are shutting down and they're not using their usual creativity. And we're trying to inspire our students to see patterns in data, to see opportunities.
Daphne, I wanted to ask a little bit more about this boot camp. Can you tell the audience what is a boot camp? What are the types of programs, and how does one participate in a boot camp, whether it's with your university or other organizations?
Well, our boot camps are something that initially, it's a little bit unique to us, but a lot of colleges, a lot of high schools, the whole educational system is talking now about micro-credentialing, not a degree, but getting certificates, getting badges. We even talk about graduating students with a wallet filled with micro badges. And the way our boot camps work is we have about 26 different topics. They're anywhere from 3 hours to a few days. Boot camps have no grades associated. They basically, you learn something, you show to the boot camp facilitators that you've completed, so you submit your work at the end. There's no grade, but at the Ted Rogers School we try to then, if we can, if it's at a certain level of proficiency, we give a badge on LinkedIn. My hope is, my dream is to sort of internationalize the boot camp idea because it's going to help with pandemic recovery. It's not a terribly stressful thing to do, but I think it's a very, very good way to learn skills and get up to date with new techniques. So it's almost like a no stress. You don't have to pass. There's no huge exam. And the joy of it is that it's taught by students. We've experimented with having the boot camps for adults, for employees of organizations. We trained people, about 300 people in the Ontario government. And we really are looking at one of the ways we can connect with our community, and I'm hoping with the Ismaili community, is by building the boot camp model and making it available.
And Daphne, absolutely, we're looking forward to it. But we also have a lot of middle-aged individuals that are struggling, not sure how to get back in. And do you think the boot camp is for them as well?
The origin of the boot camp was from, there's something at Ryerson called the Diversity Institute. And I'm going to give a shout out to a professor, Wendy Sukier, who actually, she was the one who started teaching new skills to immigrants, to people who are trying to re-enter the workforce, to women who had been out of the workforce for a while or were immigrants. And she really inspired us to take them and run with the model for our own students. So we know that this is a successful way of training. At the end of the day, at the end of a day, you have a new skill. And that makes you feel more confident and proud, and then you're ready to tackle the next new skill. So what we've done is we've made it very bite-sized. It's very achievable, and it's curiosity-driven.
Well, I liked your talk so much that I've decided to join a boot camp.
I will welcome you to a boot camp.
Daphne, one of the things we read about a lot with Future of Work is this notion of behavioral skills or social skills or the soft skills. How do you work with your students to get those soft skills?
Well, it's interesting you ask me that because a lot of our boot camps are our data visualization, Excel, Tableau, Scribe, all kinds of things that work with data. But we have many boot camps on presentation skills, on persuasion. And one of the favorite things that I've actually seen one of our professors do is take students into the elevator and literally do the elevator talk. You have from the 9th floor to the 1st floor to impress me.
So Daphne, your elevator talk to the community. 3 things that we should always be thinking about as we think of the future and the challenges of today.
I would say to be kind to others. There's a lot of advice that people should be kind to themselves. When you reach out and you're kind to others, or you're outside your comfort zone, you learn a new skill, or you watch TED Talks, or you take a boot camp, or you do something like that, you get a sense of progress, momentum, and kindness. And I think right now we really need that sense of gracious kindness to each other. We started an MBA that one of the themes in our MBA is well-being. And we did that before COVID. But I think we really hit something important because students they're saying they're taking mindfulness, they're learning how to calm down, they're learning how to get things done productively. And I think this is a really good time to revisit bad patterns and change them.
That's wonderful. And we're fortunate as a community. We always talk about this balance between our lives and our spiritual lives. And we talk about community and giving to others. And these are things that are so part of who we are. And, we forget the value that brings. And so sharing what you just have is just reinforces some of the things that the community really espouses to. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both for helping us to think about how we can all use this time to build our skills and better prepare for the world post-pandemic. And now for our inaugural FNR debate, featuring Salima Versi, an Al-Waiza and PhD candidate at the University of Alberta, and Moez Rajwani, a software engineer at Google. They will debate the topic, is technology a blessing more than a burden? Speaking for the affirmative today, we are honored to have with us Moez Rajwani. He is a software engineer at Google. At the age of 13, he started his own software and web design company, Big Tree World. He then invented the world's first oral vaccine pill. He's been recognized as one of Canada's top 20 under 20, a 3-Dash global teen leader, and a recipient of the Queen Elizabeth Diamond Jubilee Medal. At Google, he currently works on the Google Cloud healthcare team, working on large-scale software solutions for medical data and research. And taking the role of the opposition, we're privileged to have with us Al-Waiza Salima Versi. She's a psychotherapist and a Canadian certified counselor in counseling psychology. She's also a PhD candidate and instructor in the University of Alberta's Religious Studies program, where she specializes in contemporary Islam and Islamism. In addition to being an Al-Waiza, she also continues to be involved in various Jamaati institutions in a number of capacities, most recently having been appointed as the scholar convener for ITREB Edmonton. Now, personally, this topic of technology, I got a love-hate relationship with it. Do you have any online meetings I've had, and they're like, do you have anything important to say? And I'm like, I've got the most important thing to say, and then it just freezes. It's awful. Now, we recorded this debate earlier today, and it was very enlightening. Each debater had their opening remarks, and they each had time for rebuttal. And just so you know, you'll be pleased to know this, I didn't have to use my mute button once. That's how good these two are. And, very important, no flies were harmed during the filming of this debate. Watch this. Welcome to the Friday Night Reflections FNR Inaugural Debate. Sounds like we're in a rumble. It's exciting. We have two phenomenal debaters with us, Moez Rajwani, Salima Versi. They'll be debating this resolution. Be it resolved that technology is more of a blessing than a burden. Debating the affirmative is Moez Rajwani. Moez, your opening remarks, please.
Thanks so much, Hus. Honestly, to properly explore this concept, I think we need to understand what technology really is. And I know right now when we think of technology, we think of, Netflix and smartphones and TikTok, but really what it is just the application of knowledge to solve problems. So this also includes things like the development of the wheel or agriculture. And even if we go back into our own history as Muslims, our Islamic history, there's so many examples of incredible scientific development. whether you're talking about Al-Khwarizmi's algebra, which, believe it or not, is a precursor to programming, or Al-Zahrawi's dissolving stitches made of cat guts, or even if we go to our beloved Prophet, peace be upon him, he invented the miswak, which was the precursor to the toothbrush. So these are all examples of technology just from our own history, let alone all the rest of human history. Now, the truth is, Allah has given us this fantastic gift of aql, intellect, right? And intellect is really just the ability to reason and process and apply knowledge. So in reality, technology is just the application of aql. Now, how can using this divine gift from Allah be anything but a blessing? We really have a responsibility to use what Allah has given us as a gift for the benefit of humanity. And technology is special in that it enables growth and progress in a way that really nothing else really can. If you just look at education alone, for example, if you just consider the level of access that it enables for people in developing countries, it's unfathomable. In fact, Hazrat Imam back in 2001 in Washington had mentioned that access to computers can provide the first real opportunity for lifelong education on a broad scale. Or, I mean, even if we just look at the last few months, like what we've been going through with COVID, at the beginning when we were locked down, we all felt so alone and isolated, and we were able to have things like Friday night reflections to help us stay together as a community. Even if we look at this past week, we had a talika from our beloved Imam. And even this very debate, this discussion wouldn't even be possible without what is afforded to us by technology. Technology is also special in that it acts as an equalizer. Whether you're young or old or rich and poor, it doesn't really matter. You have free access to the same level of information no matter who you are. This has also really helped with poverty alleviation, whether it be food technology or education, medicine. Just the access to all this that is enabled by technology is fundamental. And with the opportunities provided to us by technology in reaching these fundamental goals of human progress, I think you really can't consider technology as anything but a blessing.
Thank you very much, Ramiz, for your opening remarks. Salima, debating the opposition. Your opening remarks, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, so as a lifelong Trekkie, I have always had very high hopes for technology. My greatest wish as a child was a replicator to make whatever I wanted and a transporter to take me wherever I wanted to go. But as I've gotten older, I have found myself becoming increasingly disillusioned with kind of this promised utopia that we see on shows like Star Trek. You know, Hazrat Imam has pointed out in places like the Ogden Lecture that our advancement as a society depends not on our technological tools, but on how we use or abuse those tools. And I'm really afraid that all we've done is abuse them, because the closer that we get to kind of this imagined level of technological advancement, the more it seems like we lose. So take, for example, this massive explosion of information that we've seen. More than ever in human history, we have this vast array of information, bigger even than the greatest libraries imagined by our forebearers. And yet that hasn't resulted in an increase in knowledge or an increase in wisdom. Instead, what we've seen is an even greater lack of respect for that information. We've seen misinformation take hold and spread across the globe like wildfire. We've seen the creation of these digital echo chambers and spaces where hatred flourishes because it isn't challenged by different opinions, and we don't have to worry about being socially acceptable in digital spaces in the same way. And while all of that is happening on this societal level, on a personal level, we're also seeing all sorts of really long-term negative consequences of our over-reliance, particularly on modern technologies. So we're seeing chronic health conditions like screen fatigue, or even sort of more severe chronic health illnesses. But especially from a mental health perspective, we're seeing an increase in alienation, in depression, in anxiety that are the result of these colliding issues. So things like social media platforms that have become a breeding ground for unhealthy self-image, doom scrolling through the ills of the world 24 hours a day. And generally, we're just seeing this deep loss of meaningful personal relationships. ultimately, I think the thing that is perhaps the greatest burden of technology, the thing that tells us that maybe the scale has tipped in the other direction, is what that last point indicates, that we are losing the things that fundamentally make us human. As social creatures, we need physical connection. Touch starvation is a real thing, and we're seeing it more and more often these days. But we also need other tangible in the world experiences. We need ritual to help us make sense of the world, sensory experiences that are grounded in touch and smell and community. We need to be able to break bread together, to gather in communion, to feed more than just our bodies. We need sacred space to remind us that we're more than just these bodies and just these minds, that our purpose is in fact a higher purpose. And those are things that ultimately we can't replicate in digital spaces, and that I think we risk losing in this like mad rush towards technological advancement. Just because everything can be done online doesn't mean that it should. And I think we really need to pause and consider what we're willing to sacrifice for increased efficiency and the profit of a small few. I think if we really want to live long and prosper, maybe what we need to do is unplug.
Yes, live long and prosper. Thank you very much, both of you, for two great openings for tonight's debate. Now for the first rebuttal, Ramiz.
For sure, and thanks so much, Salima. You make some great points on sort of this trend that we're seeing currently in technology. Now, I think the thing that we really need to understand is that technology is a tool. It's like money, it's like language, it's like media. It can be used for good, it can be used for bad, and really, the tool is as good as the person who uses it, just like in any other application of a tool, whether it be physical or, you know, intellectual. And yes, it has given us lots of negative effects. It has also given us a lot of positive effects. Medicine has never been better. The world's health has never been better than today. And that's all thanks to medical technology. You mentioned that we really need that sensory sort of experiential thing just for our souls. And I totally agree, but I think technology is the best way to enable that. I mean, we have things like planes, trains, cars. Without that, you're pretty much limited to what you can walk to. So having all these things available thanks to technology really helps with that. And I think the truth is that we need to work harder on applying technology in a more effective manner rather than just abandoning technology altogether in order to sort of move forward towards this utopia where everything is, there are no more scarcity and we just worry about exploration.
Thank you very much, Ramiz. Salima, your rebuttal to what Ramiz just said.
Thank you both. Yeah, I mean, excellent points, but I think ultimately what this comes down to is that the resolution itself is not about whether technology has given us good things. Like it has, right? I think the resolution allows for us to say there have been some blessings, but in the ultimate balance, is this really more of a burden? And I think one of the questions that we have to start asking is, at what point do we reach saturation? Like at what point do our technologies become so much of a burden that burden outweighs the blessings? And I really do think we're getting there, right? So for example, one of the things that Ramiz mentioned was this increased access to education. But the reality is that is a deeply unequal access, right? People who have privilege, people who have monetary means to access those things are the people that are benefiting from those things. And the people who need those resources the most are the people who often are not getting them. And we really have to stop and question, particularly as Ismaili Muslims, what that says to us. Where are our ethics in this conversation. So are there blessings of technology? Absolutely. But I think what we have to think about is at what point does that balance tip, and at what point do the scales really start to outweigh? And when does this become more of a burden? Because certainly, as Ramiz pointed out, and as Hazrimam has said, technology ultimately is about how we use it. And my big question at this point remains, are we actually using it in the best ways? And particularly this week, and what we've seen in terms of the results of the American election, and what we've seen in terms of like an increase in propaganda and the ways in which the world is moving, I have deep concerns that the ways in which we abuse this are actually outweighing the blessings at this point.
Thank you, Salima and Ramiz, both of you. Thank you very much for just bringing out some great points and really taking absolute views on this topic, whether or not technology is a burden. I know we asked you to do that. So let me ask the two of you, okay, straight up, debate's over. It's just the three of us and everybody else. What do you think about technology? Is it a burden? Like genuinely in your own life, how do you feel about it? Ramiz, what do you, I just open it up. I mean, but just what do you think?
Yeah, honestly, like, Salima makes some excellent points, and it really echoes my personal belief that like right now we are in a very dangerous place. Misinformation is rampant. It's being used to control people. Things are not where they should be in terms of technology. That being said, I still think technology is the best solution to all of these things. Again, technology is just the application of knowledge. We have, like, knowledge is there whether we want it or not, whether we decide it's a good thing or a bad thing. So really we have a responsibility, all of us, every single human on this planet has a responsibility. They have a stake in this thing just for the future of humanity in general. So like Salima said, yeah, like we have a lot of work to do right now to bring these extremes and this inequity together, bring these two halves of reality together. It seems like, you know, people on one side of these things, like the one side of things, are living in a complete different reality than people on the other side of things. So I think it's a blessing. It's obviously a blessing and a burden, and what it is more of really depends on how we use it, what we do from here onwards. Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, and I agree. How about you, Salima? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, largely I agree, right? Like, I think there are obviously some incredible blessings with technology. My psychotherapy practice, for example, has moved online since the pandemic began. And so I still get to see my clients and I still get to provide care. And that's been incredible, right? Like, that's definitely one of those things that technology has facilitated. My parents live in a different province. My mom is immunocompromised. And so if we didn't have technology, like, I don't know how I would ever see her or talk to her. And so certainly there are blessings, but yeah, I have a lot of privilege, right? Like, I recognize that my ability to do these things is largely because I have access to resources. And that's just not true for the majority of the world. Like, not even just like the majority of Canadians, because I think certainly in Canada, you could make the argument that perhaps more folks have access. But when you look at this on a global scale, it's just the access is so unequal. And I mean, I do still have really great concerns about what we're losing. I think especially lately, I've been really thinking about sacred space, which is one of the things I talked about in my opening remarks. And just like the tangibility of particular physical spaces that as human beings we need and we connect to in ways that we can't fully articulate. And I worry a lot about what we're losing. And that I think part of the problem is we're pushing for technological digital solutions in places where, like, I don't know that that's the best option. So yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there are plenty of blessings, and I think there are lots of ways in which we can use technology effectively. But I don't think it's the sort of panacea, silver bullet cure to everything that I think we tend to think of it as. And I do think we need to consider a little bit more carefully the places where we want to keep in-person, physical, low-tech things. because those things matter too.
It's interesting because it's like you can't go all in or all out. There is a lot of beauty in technology, but we do have to check ourselves. And I think both of you mentioned that, at least in this last discussion, that yeah, it could go too far. Before we wrap it up, let me ask you, just the two of you, really quickly. How do we check ourselves? Like, how can we be responsible with technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Alvai's answer, but also my answer is, I think faith is one of those things that helps to keep us grounded, right? Like, I think faith reminds us that we are more than just this moment. I think Hazri Mam's guidance has very clearly talked about sort of the risks inherent in this, but also the potential for growth and change, and for pushes towards equity and justice. And so I think that's really important. And I think ultimately Islamic ethics, our ethics as Ismaili Muslims, are the things that hold us in place. And I think when you apply that to how we think about technology, that's the guiding light in the long run, right? Like, the reminder that we are more than this, the reminder that we have to ensure that we're bringing everyone along with us, this idea that even in digital spaces, we should be interacting with people in ways that are kind and generous and compassionate and empathetic. Like, those are all grounded in our ethics. And so I think for me, the thing that helps us remember what that balance looks like is ultimately our faith.
I would say, you know, that was the Al-Wise answer. But from a non-Al-Wise perspective, I would say it's the same thing. Faith is really, it's really the most important thing right now that we need to hold on to. And I don't just mean prayer and all. I mean, that's obviously a big part of it. But Hazrat reminds us about Allah's creation all the time. Now, I live in Calgary, so I go down to the mountains, or I'll go to like Fish Creek Park and just sort of stroll around in the trees, and it sort of grounds me and brings me back to the reality of what we live in. So I think that if we make sure on an individual level that we're, you know, sort of balancing, keeping good balance between, yeah, I mean, social media is here and all, but let's focus on what we live in, the world we live in, understand that we are just a piece of a giant puzzle, and just that humility that comes through, that humility that Hazrat Mam's always talking about, it's unparalleled. The power of it is unparalleled as well. Like, it's the best thing that can keep technology in check in its unfettered growth.
Those are great answers. Thank you very much. And I think you guys have, both of you have pulled out some excellent points for us to discuss even at home with our friends or family about technology. And, you know, the way you wrapped it up, you know, keep the faith in terms of checking how we treat technology. So I really appreciate both of your time. Thank you very much. Be safe, and let's do this. Let's do another debate. You guys were amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Salima. Thank you, Ramiz. So much to take in. Now tell me, is technology more of a burden or a blessing? What do you think? We want to hear from you. Log on to iicanada.org/debate. Let me know what you think. We now end our show. This is it. This is the end. But before we go, we're going to have some music from some great artists within our community. Thank you all so much for joining. It has been such a pleasure to be your host, to spend time with you. Please stay on to enjoy these musical pieces. Please stay safe, everybody, and we'll see you next Friday.